In this particular session, we're focused on the intellectual virtue of intellectual courage. So let me begin, if I could, just by laying out two parts of intellectual courage as a starting place, and then I'll toss it over to you, Gerald. So one part of intellectual courage is having the courage to examine your own beliefs. And this, of course, has many dimensions. But first, we have to be willing to think through our own beliefs, to examine them, to face them, to be willing to assess them. Mm-hmm. The second part of intellectual courage is more intuitive, I think, which is that we have the courage, as it were, of our convictions to speak aloud about our beliefs when it makes sense to in context. And so those are the two primary parts, both of which are important. So Gerald, would you like to elaborate a bit on either one of those parts?
Yeah, and I would say one of yours was to courageously examine your own beliefs, and I would add to that your own actions as well. And so it's not just what I believe, but also how I act and whether my actions are in accord with my beliefs, but second of all, and more importantly, with my best reasoning. And so honestly confront them. And so I would think, so a brief way of not exactly defining, but pinpointing intellectual courage is to say, for me, it means have intellectual courage is to honestly think through positions, issues, problems, and questions. And the honestly is an important one, because that means I've got to put aside I have to put aside a whole lot. I have to put aside my ego or how I've attached to this or that. I have to put aside all, at least temporarily, put aside those beliefs that I come into the discussion with, all that background kind of knowledge or presuppositions that come from culture, or sometimes from biology, or sometimes from nationhood. So it's often a difficult thing to do. And so as we often talk about, there's a great relationship among the different traits of mind, among the different intellectual virtues. And so let me contrast intellectual courage with intellectual empathy, because I think it kind of helps to make more precise my conception of intellectual courage. With intellectual empathy, so I'm reading an author, and to intellectually empathize is to put myself in the mind of the author, not necessarily into the feelings of the author, but into the mind of the author, and see how that author is reasoning through the issues. To do that, I have to put aside my judgments about the correctness of the person's point of view. I have to bracket that off and just put myself into their frame of mind to elucidate it. So that's analysis of what the person is saying. So I'm putting aside my judgments. With intellectual courage, my judgments come in again. Now I'm going to make judgments about the other person's position. That's evaluating it. That's assessing it. And the way intellectual courage comes in is, again, I'm going to refer to that word honestly. I have to honestly evaluate the extent to which what that person is saying meets the standards of critical thinking. To what extent is it really accurate or relevant to the issue at hand? So intellectual empathy, for the most part, I refrain from judgment. Let me say, I still make judgments, but I make judgments about how clear I'm being in elucidating someone's point of view, or how accurate I am being when I'm elucidating someone's point of view. But I'm not evaluating whether that person is accurate or not. I'm putting myself into their frame of mind. But with courage, I will do that. And what that often does is it makes me reflect on my own beliefs and find perhaps flaws or shortcomings with those. So That's part of my take on intellectual courage. But as you mentioned, there are a whole lot of implications to intellectual courage. I mean, it issues in a lot of different directions.